Birth of the Crimson Princess. Crimson Princess and her fated lover. He watched her as she swirled around in the field, not a care in the world. His chest hurt. He loved her so much. He couldn't believe he was being put in this situation. Her golden strands were flowing in the wind. This was horrible. How could this happen? How could this be the person he loved? He had a duty to protect the world. He couldn't ignore that. A tear streamed from his eyes. It couldn't be helped. It had to be done. If he didn't do it, someone else was going to. No, it was best to come from him. He wiped his eyes and put on a brave face. He walked up to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. She tilted her head up and smiled at him. She felt so perfect next to him. He couldn't believe what he was about to do. A stray tear fell from his eye, and he stared down at the beautiful girl.
"Forgive me, my love,"
he quietly said, and plunged a sword into her side. He clenched his eyes shut when he saw the red liquid gush out of her body and splash onto the ground. His face was pained as he gently lowered her to the ground. He watched her confused eyes on him.
"You won't make this journey alone."
He turned the sword upon himself and plunged it deep in his chest. He laid down next to the girl he loved, taking her in his arms. He watched her begin to cry. She was sad to know he was also going to die.
"I love you."
He was able to gasp out. His eyes slowly closed.
I wish we will be reborn again, and this time have a real chance at happiness. Please, goddess, please hear me. Let me see her again. Please give me the strength to protect her. Let me be born again with her in another life. I will find her. She was always mine to love.
His mind then drifted into darkness as he left the world with his beloved in his arms. Had she passed yet or not? He didn't know. If not, he hoped it would be soon and without pain. Centuries later, a bright blood moon illuminated in the night sky, creating an eerie red haze. The cool, crisp, late summer's wind hissed through the bare trees, swaying them slightly. The moon seemed to drip its red hue on the castle of Adelon. The deafening sound of silence was interrupted by the cries of a newborn infant child from deep within the castle walls. A young midwife ran out of the room, screaming down the halls, "It has killed the queen!" While another woman ran after her, trying to shush her. "Shh! You must stop! You'll be thrown into the prisons!" The court physician shook his head at the commotion, unease in his eyes. He turned around and let out a breath, then slowly pulled the sheet up over the lifeless Queen Gwyneth. He turned to look at the crying infant who had been placed into her father's arms. King Jordan of Adelon. King Jordan was a strong, kind man who was devoted to his kingdom and his wife. He stood about 6'2" and had dark brown hair. His broad shoulders were drawn in as he cradled his baby daughter in his arms. His green eyes were red with fresh tears escaping over the loss of his beloved wife. There was apparent anger resting upon his face as well. The young midwife would definitely be punished for her fear-mongering yells over his treasured new daughter.
"What will you do with a child?"
A voice whispered out to the king. The voice came from a man that was cloaked with a dark brown cloth. He was one of the ancient prophets who helped lead the surrounding kingdoms with his insight and guidance. His name was Barthas.
Do with thee, child,"
King Jordan hissed.
"My wife gave her life bringing my child into the world. What exactly are you suggesting?"
King Jordan was filled with raw emotion at this moment, and, while he was normally a gentle and practical man, he was not one to be reasoned with right now. Barthas sighed and stared down at the tiny infant.
I'm not suggesting what you think. It's just that it has been foretold that on the night of the blood moon, a baby girl would be born. This child would be able to wield the blood sword, and will either bring about a great peace or calamity. It is said that the child would be able to control a great power. She would be the Crimson Princess.
He trailed off, staring intently at the baby. His whole life he had been waiting for the prophecy to come, and it finally had. He had conflicted emotions over this, since there were still many unknowns.
I know. I'm aware of all of this. What would you suggest? This is my child, my heir, my wife's legacy. The prophecy is vague, and I choose to put my faith in her. How could a child that Gwen and I created from love bring about any calamity? She will bring an everlasting peace. And as the prophecy states, she will give birth to heirs that will rule all the lands. Won't you, my little bug?
King Jordan softly cooed to the tiny baby. Barthas hesitated and then pulled from his cloak a black-sheathed sword.
This is hers. No one can unsheathe the sword. No one but her, that is. It is said that the sword is a dark blood color, though I have never seen it. I do not know what future she will bring. Be careful of those who will want her just for her power. I want you to know that I will also choose to believe that she will bring about a great peace.
Barthas started for the door and then turned to the king.
My lord, what will you name her?
King Jordan stared down at his precious little bundle and looked into her serene blue eyes. He smiled and looked up at Barthas.
Serenity.
Barthas nodded with a small smile and slowly walked out.
Serenity, my little one. I will protect you when I can, and I will have you trained so that you may protect yourself.
King Jordan gently kissed Serenity on her forehead and stared up at the covered body of his wife.
Please guide her and help me raise her as you would.
At the same time, in the neighboring kingdom of Dragath, an old man peered in the direction of the blood moon. The red tinge from the moon kissed his gray, loose skin as a crooked smile seized his face. He was an ancient prophet who had used his gifts and ability to unravel chaos and helped empower the kingdom of Dragath.
She has been born, sire.
His voice dripped. A tall, broad man nodded and turned to look down at his 5-year-old son.
You must make sure you make her your future wife, my young prince. She will bring our kingdom to power, and your children will become the rulers of all the kingdoms.
Yes, father, the small boy said as he stared at the moon.
Simon, it is up to you. Your father has failed to bring all the other kingdoms to their knees. This is what you have to do, for yourself, and for our kingdom.
I won't let you down, father, Simon replied. The king placed a firm hand on the young child's shoulder, and together they stared towards the kingdom of Adalon, where the red concentration of the moon shined the strongest.